Hi everyone, I'm Chef Susie. Welcome to our live session this morning. Today we're going to be making a pumpkin roll. It's that time of year. Pumpkins are in full swing, so I thought we would do something a little fall-like, and I'm just going to be doing a basic pumpkin roll, a basic cake, and then we're going to make a cream cheese filling. It's a couple alternatives, a few variations, so we'll talk about those along the way. But first, what we're going to be doing is making the topping for the pumpkin roll. I'm going to start a few things on the stove. So let's go over to the stove and take a look at this, and I'll tell you what I have here. Okay. So what we have here, this is just a very simple topping that I'm going to make. It's sweet, it's delicious. This is just a little bit of brown sugar. I have some maple syrup, and I have a little bit of rum. So I do equal parts or about of each, and what I'm going to do is just bring this to a simmer, let the sugar dissolve a little bit, and then we're just going to throw in some pecans. This is going to be a topping that I like to serve it a little bit warm, not too hot. That's why we're making it now. And then if we need to, we'll warm it up a little bit. So these little pieces of sugar, these are going to dissolve. So what I have in here is I've got some dark brown sugar. You can use light brown sugar too. I have some Anderson's pure maple syrup, and you can use something like Aunt Jemima if you have that, but if you can, get the pure maple syrup because you're going to see a big difference in the taste. And for rum, I'm using Captain Morgan spiced rum, and this has a super delicious, very unique flavor to it. Any rum will do. I like the darker rums. I think they taste a lot better, but any rum will do. If you don't want to use rum, orange goes really well. Sometimes I'll make mine with orange juice as well. So those are a few options for the topping that we're going to be making. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. And like I said, we're just going to bring this to a simmer. We're just dissolving the sugar. And dark brown sugar, it's been known to happen. You have a few little lumps in there, but they'll dissolve pretty well. And do we have any questions on anything so far? Keep in mind, if you don't have any brown sugar on hand and you've got some molasses and some white sugar, you can easily make your own, because white sugar becomes white by extracting the molasses. So you can just put a little bit of sugar and molasses. You don't have to run out to the store. Oftentimes we can find things in our kitchen that are suitable. So that's one. So this is starting to smell delicious. If you have the alcohol on an open flame, you're going to want to be careful that you're not starting it on fire. Once it starts fuming, it can ignite. So always stay back. I'm actually a little close. Usually I stay a little farther back with alcohol. Keep in mind it can ignite easily. So you want to be prepared. You don't want to be looking over it. Just kind of stay back a little bit. I'm using a wooden handled spoon. It's not going to heat up on me. So we're just going to bring this to a light simmer. And does anyone have any questions on anything? These induction burners work so quickly, and I have such a small amount, I've been hesitating turning it up, but I'm going to turn it up a little bit. Okay. So I bring this to a simmer, I thicken it a little bit, and it's nice if it's not too thick. So it gets kind of sticky, candy-like when it gets a little too thick. So just be careful how much you're simmering it. I can smell the Captain Morgan rum. Super delicious, very fragrant. Like I said, it's a nice product. Myers Dark Rum is also a favorite of mine too for something like this. But any rum will work, or maybe even a liqueur that you like. Okay, so I can feel this getting a little bit thicker. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it off. And like I said, you don't want to get too thick because it can get a little candy-like on you. You can always simmer a little bit more, but it's hard to go back. Then you have to add more syrup and a little more rum. So then you just put in a few pecans. I like to use the halves and pieces. You can use the small pieces if you like, whatever you like. You can even eliminate the nuts. You could put a walnut, something like that. Nuts go very well with pumpkin. Okay, so this is our topping, and we're just going to kind of leave it alone because we'll be using it later on. And if we need to, we'll simmer it a little bit more and make it a little bit thick. It's going to thicken a little bit as it cools. It's pretty hot right now. Okay, so we're just going to leave that alone. So let's go ahead and excuse me, let's go ahead and talk about the cake. So for the pumpkin roll, what we're going to do is we're going to make a sponge cake, just a basic sponge cake. We're going to whip some egg whites, and we're going to make the base with the pumpkin, the egg yolks, the sugar, a little bit of cinnamon. Then we're going to fold these through. So I started my egg whites ahead of time, so they're just about whipped. Keep in mind when it comes to egg whites, if they deflate, you can turn the mixer on and whip them again. They're forgiving in that way, but they're not forgiving in a way where you would have some water in there, or if you had a little bit of grease in your bowl. But to re-whip them, they're typically forgiving. And oftentimes chefs will take a little bit of vinegar on a paper towel and rub it inside of the bowl and on the whisk, and it just gives enough acidity for the egg to help the egg whites whip a little bit. These are almost whipped. We're going to whip them to a nice kind of medium firm peak. We don't want to dry them though. When they get all dry and clumpy, they not good. You don't want to get to that point. So I'm sure that we've all seen that sometime. So this is a nice peak. It's manageable. It's easy to work with. Okay, so I whipped these first because this is the only bowl that I have for this machine, and I wanted to use this. So I think a lot of times at home we only have one mixing bowl. And what you can do, I whip my egg whites first, and then I don't have to wash the bowl. I'm just going to put the yolk mixture right in here. You can't do this the other way. Egg white bowl always has to be clean. But oftentimes you're going to do this in the pastry kitchen. So you really don't have to run over to the sink and wash the bowl for this, because it's all going together in the end. I mean, you wouldn't want to leave the bowl sit out overnight like this, but we're using it right now, so we're just going to use it the way it is. Okay. So you've got the egg yolks. And please let me know if you have any questions along the way. And I've got a little bit of sugar. I'm going to whip these up.
Chad?
Question? Yep, you got a question.
So would it be, since we're setting the egg whites to the side, would it be, because I know we said to a medium firm piece, would it be a little bit okay to a little bit firmer so that the egg whites don't start to separate and deflate? Would we just say that would be good to give it a little bit more? Just
okay, I'm not hearing.
While the peaks are egg whites that are whipped, they're waiting, they're sitting aside. Sometimes I've noticed in the past, I don't know if it was under whipping, that individuals' egg whites started to separate and actually not like maintain the stiffness.
Okay, that was when you were under whipping them a little bit.
Okay, so
yeah.
Would it be good to give it a little bit of a more whip, so that way we can make sure that we whip them according enough so that we don't have to then go back and try to regain that stabilization?
You can. You just want to be really careful that you're not over whipping these. You don't want them to get to that dry, clumpy. Yeah. We've all seen that before. That's what you want to avoid. Something like this or anything, I'd rather see you have them a little bit underdone than overdone for sure. So I think this is perfect the way these are. They're a nice firm peak. You can go a little bit less, and they'll just fold in a little bit easier. But when in doubt with egg whites, always go a little bit less. You don't want that dryness, because you really can't use them. And if you do, they don't work very well. But you don't want them frothy. In the beginning, they're frothy. And when you pull out the whip, they're not sticking to the whip at all. That's way too underdone. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm starting the egg yolk mixture with the sugar. Is that a question for me? Okay, so we just have a little bit of talking in the background, not a question for me. So what we're going to do is we're going to set this aside, and feel free to message me if you have any questions. If something comes up afterward, we can kind of talk about it. So we're going to be whipping these egg yolks until they're a little bit lighter in color. Then we're going to add some pumpkin, we're going to add a little bit of cinnamon, and then we're going to fold in the sifted cake flour. I always mix a little bit of sugar in my cake flour for this one. That seems to blend in a little bit better. And please let me know if you have any questions. Okay, so this is looking good. It's cooling off a little bit and it's coating the pecans. And like I said, I don't like it to get too candy, like too gummy. Okay, we're gonna let these work on their own a little bit. Let's talk about the filling for the cake. We're gonna be doing a cream cheese filling. We're gonna mix a little bit of whipped cream in it, and you can do so many variations. If you didn't want to do something lighter, you could do a butter with the cream cheese, a cream cheese buttercream. That's fine too. It's really limitless. You could even fill this with fudge. Chocolate goes really well. So the flavor combinations are limitless, and I always like a little bit of orange with my pumpkin. Okay, so this is coming together nicely. We're gonna let it work on its own a little bit, and I'm just wondering if anyone has any ideas for flavor combinations with pumpkin. Maybe something unique that you've done with your pumpkin that you want to share. Another flavor combination that I like with the pumpkin is the coconut. I think that's so nice. I think it's a nice contrast. Okay, so our egg yolks look great. They're nice and light in color. What we're going to do next is we're going to add our pumpkin. And please let me know if you've got any questions. And Chef Susie likes to go heavy on the cinnamon. So you could also do a pumpkin pie spice that works well. And you can do a little bit of orange zest or a little bit of lemon zest. But I'm just using some cinnamon. Like I said, I like to go a little bit heavy on that. So you're just going to mix this together. And then this is the base for our cake. Okay, looking good. Okay, nextly we are going to be putting in the flour. And like I said, I've got a little bit of sugar mixed in here. For me, it mixes in a little bit better. I'm going to add half, and then we'll add the other half. And this isn't a real thick batter. Okay, it's smelling pretty pumpkin-like in here. You can fold this in by hand as well. With this formula in particular, the stand mixer or hand mixer is going to work very well because you've got all of this whipping of these eggs. And we do have another question. Okay, we got a really good question. All the questions are really good questions. The difference between the flours. Using cake flour here. Okay, let me turn this off the machine and we'll talk flours, which is always fun to talk about flour. Okay, so I've got cake flour here. So this is a lighter color. It's usually a little bit whiter. Oftentimes cake flour is bleached and it's just whiter and it's lower in gluten. And that means it's more delicate. The gluten is a plant protein that is in the flours. So flours have different amounts of gluten in them, and cake flour would probably be the lowest. And then pastry flour is lower in gluten, and then all-purpose flour would be a little bit more, and then bread flour is a strong flour. It's got a lot of gluten in it, and that's what makes your bread real chewy. And less gluten is what makes your cake so light. And keep in mind, too, if you don't, let's say you only have all-purpose flour, and you need to make some cake flour, you can Google it and you can make your own cake flour by adding some cornstarch to that all-purpose flour. So you can kind of do your own blends a little bit. Just be mindful, all-purpose flour can really vary in the strength of the protein. So you can look at the label. I think King Arthur runs a little bit higher in protein, which is okay. It's just a few percentages, but it may change your baking just a little bit. You can also make your own pastry flour by blending cake flour and all-purpose flour together. So it's kind of fun to explore flours, and once you start reading about these blendings of the flours and the percentages of the gluten, it'll give you a better understanding. So I hope that helps a lot with cake flour, bread flour, all-purpose flour, and pastry flour. So definitely keep in mind, if you have a formula that calls for cake flour, you're not going to be able to substitute bread flour. It's way too strong. It's going to make your product really dry. It's going to soak up all that hydration. And once you start developing it, you're going to develop the gluten, which is going to cause some dryness in your cake. Okay, so we've got our base for our sponge cake. Nice pumpkin base, and we're going to go ahead and we are going to fold in our egg whites. So what I like to do is about half at a time, and we're just going to gently fold these. We don't want to put this on a mixer because we've whipped the air in. We took the time to whip the air in. So what we are going to do is be careful not to mix the air out. Some of that is going to happen through the mixing process, but the more delicate that we are, the more careful we are, the less that's going to happen. Okay, let's go ahead and add the rest of the egg white, and then our batter for our sponge roll is going to be ready to go. Okay, please let me know if you have any questions. So this is pretty easy to make. We've made meringue before, we've made bases before. It's just a matter of mixing. Okay. Just kind of folding, going to the bottom, bringing this up, and you can see you're going to have less and less streaking. I mean, as soon as the streaking is gone, you don't see any of the darkness from the pumpkin or the whiteness from the meringue, you know it's done, and that's when you want to stop. You don't want to keep going and, you know, gabbing to your friends or gabbing to me. I'm just going to stop at this point. So I just have a little bit more pumpkin here. I must have had a little pocket there. I'm going all the way to the bottom. Rubber spatula is great for doing this because then you can get all the way to the bottom. You can go along the side of the bowl. So there it is. It's perfect. Nice and fluffy. I like to use this type of cake mix for my sponge roll because it's more pliable. You'll oftentimes see these with a leavener in them. Here the air is a leavener, and for me it makes it a little bit more flexible. So when you see these with a leavener, you may see a note in the formula to roll it in a towel when it comes out of the oven, which is really common. So there's a lot of different kinds of these cake formulas out there, and you know you'll find which one works best for you. You can use mine or you can explore some other ones. So let's go ahead and pan this up. Okay, so what I like to do is I like to put this on the back of one of my half sheet pans, and I just secure my paper with a little bit of batter. I do this with my pat a chute too, and this way it's not going to go anywhere, so you don't need much. Okay, so I just have some plain parchment, and I'm going to be putting a layer. The formula that I'm going to give you is for 2 of these, so you can kind of divide it in 2. And this is something that you're going to want to work on this quickly because it's aerated, and it's going to be deflating as you're working. So you kind of want to, don't go anywhere. Just once you're done with the mix, go ahead and put it on the pan and pop it in the oven. You're going to bake this at 350 degrees, and this is going to bake for about 10 to 12 minutes. This is thin cake. It's not going to take too long. You're really not going to see any browning here. What you're going to see is some firmness, and what you can do is touch it, and if it springs back, it's done. What I recommend doing, so you can become familiar with this, is about halfway through the baking, go ahead and touch the end of it and see how it feels, and then touch the center, and you'll see a difference, and that's going to help you determine if it's done, because that end is going to be done before the center. Okay, so I'm just using my offset spatula. You don't want to work this too much. Got to go in the oven. 350 degrees for about 10 to 12 minutes. Keep a close eye on it though. If you see some coming off the edge here, just kind of scrape it off. Okay, so there we go. So we're going to be setting all this aside, and I made a sponge earlier, and I'm just wondering, does anyone have any questions? Okay, so next we're going to fill the sponge cake, and then we'll, I have one that I made earlier, and we'll go ahead and present that one. So let's go ahead and fill the sponge cake. Okay, so I've got some sponge that I made earlier, and what you're going to do is you're going to cover the top with some powdered sugar. And this is going to help it not stick. So it's a super humid day here today, so this cake is a little stickier than it would be. And in the winter months and the drier climates, you'll find that you won't need to use so much, but I'm putting on a little bit extra because it's really humid here today, and this was pretty sticky earlier. Okay, so nextly what we're going to do is we're going to pick it up and we're going to invert it onto our work surface, and then we're just going to peel off the paper, and then we're going to go ahead and fill it. Okay. And please let me know if you have any questions. Okay, so it's coming off nicely. We have a little crack, so we'll just kind of put that together. I made this earlier and I was traveling with it, and I got a little crack in there, but we can easily overcome that. And we do have another question.
Yes, Chef, did you actually spray that? Because I was taking notes. I'm sorry.
No, no, I didn't spray it. I just when I put the batter on top of the parchment, what I did is I just dabbed the corners with a little bit of batter so the parchment wouldn't move. I put the cake batter right on the parchment, baked it for about 10 to 15 minutes. I baked this one earlier, and keep an eye on it because look how thin it is. It's going to bake real fast for you. And then I just put powdered sugar on it. I went a little heavy because it's super humid here today. The cake was sticky. And then I just inverted it and peeled the parchment off. So it's, yeah, it's pretty easy to do. And sometimes with cake rolls, you know, they crack sometimes when you roll them, and for a variety of reasons if you have a little bit of thickness. But this is pretty bendable, as you can see. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to, I've got a little bit of filling prepared. So what I did is I creamed some cream cheese. And I'm just going to be folding some whipped cream through this, and this is the kind of filling that I like to use for my pumpkin cake roll. This is nice and light. It's got a nice cream cheese flavor. What you can do is you can make a little bit of buttercream if you want. You can use butter instead of the whipped cream. And what you can also do is, you know, some sort of filling. You could make like a fudge that goes nice with the pumpkin. Chocolate goes really nice. You could just use a plain buttercream instead of the cream cheese. And I'm just carefully folding this through. So my cream cheese got a little bit set in here because I mixed it earlier, because like I said, I only have one mixing bowl over here to work with, but you can work your way around that. So what we're going to do is let's kind of mix this together a little bit. And you can flavor these with a variety of flavors. You can add nuts, nice touch, and you can add extracts. Orange is really nice, as I mentioned earlier with the topping. And another extract that's nice is vanilla or rum extract, or even coconut. I like to use a coconut extract sometimes. With pumpkin, I think they go together nicely. And you could even do an almond. That would be nice too. So definitely explore some different things. And also, when you put your cake batter on the pan before you bake it, you could even sprinkle the entire top with some nuts, and that would be nice. It's going to add some texture. Those will bake in there nicely. The bake time is low, so you don't have to worry about the nuts burning on top of the cake at all. My hand's getting a little bit tired here. Okay. Now almost done folding in the cream cheese into the whipped cream. Okay, this is a nice light filling. And like I said, you can do a buttercream, pretty much whatever you like. And what's nice about these pumpkin rolls is there are a lot of different formulas out there. If you don't like the steps to this one with the whipping the egg whites and all of the folding, you can explore a different recipe that has a leavener for baking soda or baking powder rather than the egg whites. The air in the egg whites is leavener. Okay, so please let me know if you have any questions. Okay, so I'm just mixing this in a little bit more. Like I said, my cream cheese kind of thickened up a little bit. Might have to actually whip this a little bit and get some of these lumps out of here. Okay, I think I will grab my hand whip here. I have a few lumps in here. I don't want to fill this with these lumps, so I'm just going to gently whip these out. Okay, so please let me know if you have any questions. Okay. That's looking a little bit better. We still have a few in there because we whipped it by hand. Okay, so this is a nice light filling. So we're going to go ahead and fill our sponge roll. And please let me know if you've got any questions along the way. The question is on the baking temperature. We're going to bake this at 250 for about 10 to 12 minutes. Just keep an eye on it because it is thin. It's not going to take long at all. Okay, so this is a nice light filling. Like I said, you could do a buttercream, you could do a mousse, you could do a fudge. Just really limitless what you can do with this. Okay, for my cake roll, when I'm using these lighter fillings, I'm a little mindful on how much I'm putting in here. I try not to put too much. So that can cause some cracking as well. Okay, so this is a delicious flavor. It's a little bit lighter. You're going to want to set this up, or anytime you make a cake roll, you're going to want to set it up before you cut it. If you have to, you can cut it, but it's going to cut a little bit cleaner if you set it up ahead of time. So what I like to do is I'll trim off my edge. And I like to roll away from me. Some people roll towards them. It's really whatever you like. Scraps are fun to save for friends. Okay, so let's go ahead and roll the cake roll. Just kind of want to get it started a little bit. Like I said, I've got quite a bit of powdered sugar on here because it's humid here and it's sticky today. So typically you wouldn't have to use this much. So I've got a nice amount of filling. So I'm doing some rolling. I had a little crack in here, but we're just going to keep going. And then we have our cake roll. So sometimes these have a tendency to crack. And what we'll do is once it sets up, we'll kind of squeeze it together a little bit and we'll kind of get that crack out of there. With these looser fillings, that's when you'll see a crack sometimes. So what I like to do is I like to save my parchment and I just roll it back onto my parchment. And I'm going to be putting it in the freezer to set up. Okay, so always put the seam side down. And this is a great way to utilize your parchment. You can line these up on the pan and you can freeze them, maybe make 6 or 7 of them, and then just pull them out as you need them. So let's go ahead and put this away. We're going to clean up and then we'll go ahead and take a look at one of the rolls that I made earlier. I've got it setting up. Okay. And please let me know if you have any questions. I'm going to clean this up a little bit. So the cake roll is super easy to make. It's just, it's a process. And these are all steps that we've done before, so let's go ahead and take a look at the cake that I made earlier. And like I said, if you have any cracking, this can happen sometimes with cake rolls if you have a thickness or if these fillings are a little bit thinner. Okay, so here's the cake roll that I made earlier. So I had it setting up. Let's go ahead and take a look at it. So I've got a little bit of cracking, and like I said, it's pretty humid here today, so I've got a little bit of wetness on here. Let's go ahead and I'm going to take it off the paper. And it's pretty flexible. And what we can do is we can press it together a little bit, and we'll be decorating this as well. Okay. We've got it on our board, and we're just going to plate this with our sauce real quick. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at the inside. We have a nice swirling on the inside. It's exactly what we're looking for, and we have a question. The question is, how long can you store these? So you can store them for some time in the refrigerator. I would say, a few days, and they may start to get a little bit wet. We've got some wetness here today because of the weather, and you can store these in the freezer. I would store them for maybe 3 weeks in the freezer. Just wrap them up really good. Keep them rolled in their parchment. That's the best way to store these, and then just wrap them in plastic. So we have a nice cake roll here. So we're going to go ahead and finish this off. So it has some beautiful swirling on the inside. And like I said, it's really limitless what you can do with the flavors with these, as well as textures. You can add some nuts. You can put some nuts in the filling. You can decorate these for the holidays. So they're a lot of fun to work with. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to dust this one with a little bit of powdered sugar because we do have some wetness to kind of finish it off. Even the powdered sugar is sticky today. It's so humid here today. It's unseasonably warm and very humid too. So for people that live in warm, humid climates, you'll appreciate that. Okay, so you can present this individually on the plate as I'm doing, or you can serve it whole. So these are fun to work with. So let's go ahead and finish this off. Okay, so we have our sauce that we made earlier. And remember when I said you don't want to let this go too far, you don't want to candy it. And it's the perfect consistency. I just brought it to a simmer. Keep in mind I had a small amount. So it's coating these pecans nicely. It smells delicious. Can smell the rum very well. And I thought I had a spoon here. Nope. Okay. Well, I'll just use this one that I have. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're just going to put some of this over the top. I kind of like to let it go off the sides a little bit. It's a nice representation of the cake roll. And I've got a little bit of orange. Like I said, orange juice is a nice variation with this instead of gotta clean my knife, hold on. Instead of the rum. Okay, so let's put some sliced oranges on here, huh? And we're getting ready to wrap up, so if anyone has any questions, please let me know, and I hope that you have a terrific day. We're gonna get a little bit of orange on here, finish this up, and oranges aren't so good here. I heard that the orange crop, there's a problem with the orange crop. Did anyone hear that as well? No. Okay. All right, well, I've got an orange and it's looking pretty good, so we're on our way. Okay, I'm just going to put a few pieces. You can put a little bit of fresh mint on here as well. Okay. Okay, we're just going to get a little bit of color on this, and then we're going to say our goodbyes. And we have another question.
Is there something other than rum?
Okay, the question is there something other than rum that you can put in the sauce? Absolutely, you could put a little bit of orange juice, and then this is going to be a nice complement to the oranges that we're putting on here. So you could also do a different liqueur if you want, and the orange juice works well. You could do this without any juice. You could do the maple syrup and the sugar, and just don't simmer it as long as it's going to get a little bit thick on you. But we are going to say our goodbyes, and thanks so much for joining me today for the pumpkin cake grill, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.